So thank you to all of our friends and fans for joining ACEI. My name is Adrienne Hank, and I am ACEI's Director of Global Schools First, which is our new Global Citizenship Education initiative. Global citizenship education is really so important now, more than ever, especially given how increasingly interconnected our world has become. Mainly because it represents a way for children to learn to relate to each other and learn to interact with each other across many lines of difference. Social differences, ethnic differences, racial, religious, even differences from, someone here in my community, and then someone across the world. And this is so important, global citizenship, because it's both about valuing our differences, but also about kind of embracing our common humanity of all people around the world. Schools, they play such a crucial role in helping children to understand the world and to discover how they can have the capacity to tackle the world and ultimately improve the world, for us now and then also for future generations. So this is why I'm really so excited about ACEI's new initiative, Global Schools First, because it focuses on schools through a whole school approach. And it provides primary schools worldwide with the guidelines and resources to implement global citizenship education, not just in one classroom, but as an ongoing process throughout all aspects of school life. Now today, I'm chatting with Lisa Petro. She is a curriculum developer specializing in global education, and she is the co-founder of Know My World, a global education resource organization that connects classrooms all over the world through virtual exchanges and also through social, emotional, and cultural learning. And I'm going to be speaking with her about this issue of providing global citizenship education to all children. Really the big question is, how do we ensure that every child everywhere in every nation has access to and is able to benefit from quality global citizenship education? So hi, Lisa. Thank you for joining us. So let's start off with the first question. Why is global citizenship education so important for children, especially right now?
Hi, Adrienne. I just want to say thank you first before I answer that question, and I'm really excited to be dialoguing with you today, and also just to be present to the great work that you are all doing at ACEI. It's just an outstanding organization that really supports students all over the world. So thanks for inviting me today. And agreed, this is an incredibly, it's an imperative time for global citizenship education in the world. And it's crucial, I think, for youth for several reasons. When we look at global education and the state of global education right now, there is this, this sort of push towards this global competitiveness. We're in the midst of globalization. This is something that's not necessarily new. It's been happening for a very long time. We could really see turning points in things like the industrial age and then the post-war era. And so now we have the Internet of Things, and we have social media, and we have the information age that has passed. And there's just a lot of things happening in the world. And so when we talk about global education or global citizenship education, there's this draw to preparing students for a globalized world. Most often that comes out in terms of the workforce, giving all students the opportunity to have an equal access at this competitive place in the world, being able to compete with others, and sometimes that looks like multilingualism or having the knowledge of how to code switch or adapt between cultures, especially if you're working in the corporate world, international business world. And so there's all of these implications. And it's prevalent. I mean, there's been studies and research by PISA, the Program for International Student Assessment, and the NEA, and British Council, even Forbes and Harvard Business Review write about these being necessary skills for success in the world. And so for all those reasons, there's importance. But I also think it's actually just a hook or a buy-in that we've created, because whether it's a conscious effort or not, we're really struggling with our own humanity. Globalization creates a new sense of community. And so we're looking for ways in which we can restore relatedness, restore community in the face of a rapidly changing world. It's impossible to keep up with all of the information that we now have access to. And I think this is the same for students. So whether you have students who come from very affluent backgrounds and have a lot of resources, and they have a vast amount of access to this information, or you have a student who's living in a rural area and is struggling just to grapple with the concept of internet in their lives, on both sides, the definitions of community and relatedness are being changed. And so in this world, it's imperative that we have global citizenship education in order to prepare students not just to succeed in the workforce, but of course just to be better humans and to be able to create better communities.
Thank you. Yeah, I totally agree with you. That focus on community and how we're relating to our community is so, so important. And so since you brought it down to that level, let's talk about schools. What can schools be doing to ensure that all students have access to global education?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in my work as a curriculum developer, I often work with schools, and I use the whole school approach. The idea is that you'll have a school system or a campus or even community organizations. I've also worked with community organizations who want to integrate these principles into their curriculum. The first point is that I think there needs to be an open dialogue about what global citizenship education is. I think we're working very hard right now in the field to develop a common language, and it's difficult because it goes across lots of different cultural contexts, social contexts, but I think having some kind of common language, even if the vocabulary, the terms differ slightly, the root of that, the mindset of that has a commonality to it. So whenever I work in a consulting capacity with schools, the first thing I do is a school audit. It's imperative that we are employing the very same principles that we're asking students to learn inside of global citizenship education. So going in and looking at all the stakeholder groups, looking at, is there inclusiveness here? Is there flexibility here? What is the student voice? What is the student impact? How does the design meet all learners? And what are the cultural implications that really make your learning environment special or unique? And so I think this is one of the most important things for this question, is for schools to look at what is the surface culture? How do we appear on the surface? And then what is the deep culture? What are the ways of being that either support this mindset or hinder this mindset for all of our stakeholders invested in this learning environment? I think that's key for all schools.
Absolutely. I love that, how you are focusing on examining each particular school from the beginning. I think, basically what you're saying is that there's really, there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. So maybe can you share some specific practices around global education, maybe some really especially innovative ideas you've come across in your work?
Yeah, so through my work with Know My World, we do a lot of virtual exchange experiences, and our goal is to approach virtual exchange as a methodology and include strategies that are specific to social, emotional, and cultural learning. And so I think that there is so much opportunity inside of this methodology of virtual exchange. Technology is a part of globalization. It is, some could argue, the driving force behind globalization at the time. And there's a lot of, really well-equipped and knowledgeable organizations out there that can support teachers from every resource level, whether it's someone who has very limited budget or access to technology, all the way up to people that have full resources. So this is available and it's accessible for almost everyone in the world. I mean, I've even had experiences in Nepal or in Ghana where, you know, there might not have been internet in the classroom, but people had cell phones and they had mobile internet capabilities. And so inside a virtual exchange where you're not maybe able to do, well, like we're doing now, like a Zoom meeting or a Skype meeting, you can do asynchronous learning through videos and audio bites. So there's a lot of opportunity with virtual exchange and internet. And something that I don't see happening yet is using this methodology to connect schools in collaborative partnerships for this kind of capacity building, for developing these more sustainable mindsets inside of the curriculum. I've seen it in pieces. I mean, it happens, but I haven't seen anything necessarily systemized or any specific kind of program that's geared toward that. There are great programs in the University of North Carolina that do this with pre-service teachers. As a matter of fact, you have Global Schools First, who are doing really great programs. And also in Know My World, we have had teachers approach us about virtual exchange because they're looking to meet another teacher in the world and they want to look at what is possible. What am I missing that's not coming from my cultural context? What am I missing that's not coming from my school culture? How can I look at ways other people are doing things and create something more integrative and more inclusive? So I think looking at virtual exchange as a methodology for building this kind of mindset, for building global citizenship education through partnership alliances, is a really strong and innovative practice that has a lot of space to be explored and expanded on.
Great. I was wondering, I mean, especially with these virtual exchanges, and especially when it's teachers and teachers who are looking to connect to each other from very different parts of the world, have you seen any really, you know, best practices? Like, what should teachers be what kind of mindset should they be going in with, or what should they do to make the most out of these exchanges?
Yeah, that's a great question. And again, it's this trickle down effect, right? So what we do know, and especially what we know, for example, inside of competency-based learning, right? There's these underpinnings to learning. There's the information, but then there's the way in which we learn. We see this in growth mindset too, for example. So inside of global citizenship education, there are principles like flexibility, adaptability, empathy, understanding, the knowledge, skills, and attitudes that are the underlying pieces to the global citizenship. So I think this is the same in the methodology. When teachers go into a virtual exchange experience, it's imperative that they get clear about their goals. Now, you're going to have subject and content goals, but most often you can meet your subject and content goals without a partner. You can do that in an informational way in your classroom. The broader goals is the thing to keep in mind, and especially when just building out the curriculum school-wide, you know, in what ways am I looking to communicate effectively? I'm learning how to be adaptable, how to code switch, how to use language. All of these things are much larger principles. So my best practice advice in an exchange is come to the exchange with that broader competency-based goal that's specific to global citizenship education, that's specific to the way that you exercise intercultural communication. And inside of that, look at challenges as learning opportunities. The richest learning comes in the difficulty, in the challenge. That doesn't mean you force things. What it means is you look at what else is possible if the way of doing things, the way I do things, isn't necessarily working. What else is possible? How can we make this work? So the goal doesn't become about being right or getting exactly the outcome you were looking for. The goal becomes about the flexibility, the empathy, the relationship building, essentially, again, the community. That's really what it's all about.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Lisa, for joining us and sharing your insight and expertise. It is always wonderful to hear your perspectives on global education. I want to remind all of you watching again, especially if you are a primary or elementary school teacher, principal, head teacher, school administrator, or any other kind of school leader working with primary schools anywhere in the world. If you are someone who wants to take a closer look at your school and your school's global education practices and see how you can bring a global perspective into all aspects of your school, Lisa mentioned this whole school approach. Please visit our Global Schools First website to begin what we are calling your Global Citizenship Education journey. We're going to be launching the first part of Global Schools First at the end of this month, and I encourage all interested schools to go to the website and fill out the quick registration form, which you'll find at www.acei.org/begin journey. Thank you so much, everyone.